I put a makeup on, I put a beautiful dress on, and the Dutch guy would just tell me, yes, but you're actually more beautiful without any makeup and without that dress. I like you in more oversized hoodies, then you're more yourself. Everyone loves to discuss the most ridiculous tikkie they ever got. And for me, it was a tikkie for 57 cents. So we went on the roof and we started jamming. I started singing. He started playing. And then a lot of older people, they went out and they started watching us or joining us. They started dancing. They started bringing their own instruments. And I was shocked because in the Netherlands, it would never happen. Within 5 minutes, there would already be a police there.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Dating Beyond Borders podcast. Today, I'm excited to introduce Alisa, an ethnically Ukrainian, Kyrgyzstan-raised content creator who moved to the Netherlands at 18 and now shares her experiences living there on social media. We'll be discussing Alisa's experience in the Netherlands, from her biggest challenges to adapting to the culture, dating Dutch men, and everything you need to know about fully integrating into Dutch culture and way of life. So welcome, Alisa.
Thank you. Thank you.
So Alisa, for anyone that doesn't exactly know what is ethnically Ukrainian, Kyrgyzstan-raised, what does that mean?
Well, I was born in a small town in Kyrgyzstan, in Bishkek. And but my parents are ethnically Ukrainian, which means that my grandparents were born in Ukraine. That's why I look Slavic, because a lot of people ask usually, hey, you're from Central Asia, but why do you look Slavic? So that's why. But I was born and raised in Kyrgyzstan, and I lived there until my 18th.
You go from mountains to the flattest country in the world.
It's true. It's true. It's kind of crazy because this summer I met my Dutch friends and they were like, yeah, we're going to the south and there is a mountain there. And I arrived there and it was just literally a hill and they called it a mountain. And I was like, girl, you don't call it a mountain. It's not a mountain. No. Yeah, it's just all flat.
Yeah. Let's talk about your experience. If you can remember, 18 is still one of those, it's an age when you're still somewhat developing, more like fully developed, but still, you moved to the Netherlands with your family, right? So thankfully, you weren't alone in this. Maybe it made it a little bit easier than some of the other people that I talked to. But what were some of those whoa, this is very different? What was that feeling when you arrived to the Netherlands, besides the flat, rainy terrain?
Yes. Well, it was actually a disastrous experience for me because, I think there are two types of migrants, the ones who move voluntarily and the ones who don't. And I belong to the latter group, unfortunately, because, my family was forced to move as political refugees. So we were moving from one country to another country, and then we were invited by the Netherlands to come to the country. So it was mentally, it was just very, very difficult because you just don't want to be there. And I missed my home country a lot. And then we were placed in a small village in the north of the Netherlands, and I'm from for Kyrgyzstan, it's a relatively big city where you have everything. And then you're just in the middle of nowhere. You see cows everywhere. It's green. There are a lot of fields. And I was like, oh, where am I? And I remember I was biking to the nearest city, which is Groningen. And I just arrived there and it was already around 7:00 and all the shops were closed because all the clothing shops, they close at 6 and supermarkets at 10. And it was just, everything was closed and everything was so quiet. And I felt like my first impression was how boring. That was my first impression. Yeah.
Okay. So That's very interesting. So you and your family lived in a small city for quite some time before you moved.
Well, we lived in Bishkek, and then after Bishkek, my family lived in in Kazakhstan. Then they tried to go to Ukraine. I stayed in Central Asia, and then I joined them in Georgia and Tbilisi. And after Tbilisi, we moved to a small town in the Netherlands.
Yeah, just as a side note, Tbilisi, I really, really love that city.
It's
But
way, yeah.
I love it. I really love it. But okay, so you basically your the comparison was that you moved from like a more like a bigger city, and then you arrive in the Netherlands and it's kind of rainy and sad and small, and there are no people around, basically.
Yes, it just feels like a village and not just that small city, but actually to me, like every city in the Netherlands feels like a small or like a big village, because yeah, everything is closed quite early and people go to bed quite early. I mean, you can still party and go out, but also until like 1 o'clock, and then it's done. And you don't have that in Kyrgyzstan. No, it never sleeps basically.
Yeah, that's interesting because I had an interview with a Dutch girl in Spain, in Barcelona, and she had mentioned that in Spain, of course, we all know the Spanish fiesta culture, but she mentioned that in the Netherlands, it's kind of, more or less, you have a very routine way of life where you work, and then like Friday, Saturday, you may go out, and then the rest of the time, it's very much a kind of routine way of life where you don't stay out too late and you don't go out so much. How true is this?
Yes, it is pretty true. There is a certain routine, and Dutch love rules in general, and it's kind of it's kind of. I mean, I don't want to generalize here. It's different for everyone, of course. But most of the Dutch people I work with, most of the Dutch people I meet, they live like that. So like they work from 9 to 5, then around 5 they go home, they eat, they watch a TV show, and then they go to sleep. And then the next day it's like this all over again. It's I think the part of do normal. They say it, yeah, that use this phrase kind of often, do normal, which means behave normal. And I think it's part of that mentality a little bit, yeah.
Let's talk about two things. Rule culture and the do normal. I can't do that accent.
Yes.
So first of all, the rule culture. What does that mean for anyone that doesn't know? Because I hear this a lot, and we all know, oh, Germans, they love their rules. But people talk a bit less about the Dutch liking their rules. And I think it may especially be true for the Dutch. So what does that mean in terms of like making friends or hanging out with people or anything else?
I mean, yeah, there are rules for everything, basically, from where to park your bike, because it happened to me like 1,000 times that I left my bike somewhere where I thought I could leave it, and then the same day it was the municipality took it, and I have to pay to get it back. And the same goes for instance, listening to music late at night. When my boyfriend and we moved to a new apartment, I put on the jazz music quite quietly, to be honest. And within 5 minutes, there was our neighbor calling, and she was complaining, like, please, could you turn it off? And it was like around 8 o'clock, which is too much even for the Netherlands, even for the Dutch, it's a bit too much. But yeah, there are just a lot of rules. Also, for instance, if you have an appointment at 6, you come at 6 or earlier. And a lot of people can get really angry because of that. So it's really time is really important. Discipline is really important, and the rules are very important as well.
And does this also play out when it comes to, let's say, dinner parties or parties in general, that you should come on time?
Yes, definitely. And for me, it's one of the biggest cultural differences because Kyrgyz people are known for coming late. And there are a lot of jokes about it in Kyrgyzstan, but everyone just doesn't take it seriously. Time is a very wake concept for us. I remember as a kid, my mom was like, she was running late and she was called, and people were asking, "Hey, where are you?" And she stuck her head out of the window with her phone, and she was like, yeah, I'm already on the street, I'm running, oh, it's kind of busy. And when I tell this story to my Slavic friends, they laugh, but I also told this story to my Dutch friends, and they were like, it's so disrespectful, it's really disrespectful, how can you do this? So they value their time a lot. So, and also discipline is very important.
Yeah, I always find this like concept of time is so interesting because it really does depend on where you are in the world so much. Like when you look at like all of like Northern Europe, let's say like Scandinavia, Germany, the Netherlands, Austria, whatever, like that part of the world, everyone there is so organized and so disciplined. And I think like part of it is probably comes down to the fact that, because of the weather, because of the way they had to organize themselves, like they wouldn't be able to survive. Having said that, though, being Russian, I don't think that like being on time is such an important concept for us. Like people come on time, but it's not like right on the dot, but it's also a cold country where you had to learn to plan ahead to survive. So
yes,
that's
it's true.
interesting.
Yeah. If you have a business meeting, of course, like you will do your best to come on time to show that you're a professional. But if you have a date, for instance, I had guys I had dated that I had the date with, and they were really angry about the fact that I came too late. But in my culture, it's considered for a girl to be desperate if she comes on time. It's like she has nothing else to do. So she was sitting there and waiting for the date to come. And then she came on time. It's even weird. I mean, people don't expect it. Yeah.
How late were you on this date that they got mad?
I was late several times.
By how many minutes,
I mean,
Vicky?
oh my God. One time a guy got angry because I was late for 10 minutes. But another time it was really, really bad. I was late for almost 1 hour. But I had my reasons. But it was a dramatic experience. He was very angry.
But let me ask you, did you message him to say you're coming late? This is the key here.
I did.
Oh.
Yes, I did. And I got a lot of messages back like, oh, it's so disrespectful. And yeah, I made time for you. And you're late. So yeah.
Yeah, I've experienced this before where I'm always careful. If I'm running late, I'll always let them know. I'm so sorry, I'm running late. And I don't remember where the guy was from, but I actually think he was French, which is really weird. But I think he was like, yeah, well, I'm giving it another 5 minutes and then I'm leaving. And I thought, come on, I let you know. You know what I mean? Like I've had guys be late on me, and if they're letting me know, it's okay, But
yeah. I had it one time that the Dutch guy, he just left. He left without saying anything. And then the day after I was trying to reach him, and he told me, yeah, I mean, I was waiting for you and I don't care. You were too late, so bye.
Wow. So there's not even the benefit of doubt. Like something might have happened. It's very much by the book in terms of, I think it's also interesting, and I don't want to jump into relationships just yet, but I think it's interesting because I think it maybe comes down to also like they're kind of evaluating you for future, and they're seeing, okay, can I count on her? Is she going to be a partner that I can, that we can work together with? And like already it's like kind of strict check boxes that you may be checking off. And instead of, I think in certain cultures it's just like, oh, she's a woman, oh, it takes her time to get ready, this is just whatever, women just do this kind of stuff.
Yes, it's true. I mean, I think it has to do with a lot of social and cultural and historical influences in the Netherlands as well, because the Dutch are known for being great traders, for instance, and that's why they are disciplined. That's why they value their time. That's why planning is very important. And I will talk about it later, but it also goes down to the Calvinistic influence in the Netherlands as well. Discipline is just very important, and you value your time. Time is money. So It's
Yeah.
very important. Yeah.
Hey guys, I just wanted to take a second to thank you all for tuning into this podcast. These podcasts take so much work. So any of your support is much appreciated. If you have a second, please go and give it a follow and a 5 stars if you really enjoyed it. Now, back to the episode.
Time is money is really important. And I think this is the stereotype that Dutch are cheap. Maybe kind of stems from that because a lot of times the time is money is kind of like, oh, why would I waste more money on something as well, right? Not sure if those two are related, but I wrote something about like this time is money, and the Dutch people, they really related to that because they said, oh, this is so true. Like, we also don't really like to spend a lot of money on things, and we're very efficient when it comes to that.
Yeah, I think it's also what I mentioned earlier. I mean, the Dutch society is mostly secular, but they're influenced a lot by Calvinism, and Calvinism emphasizes frugality, time management, being modest, being simple. And in Slavic culture, it's absolutely it's different. Yeah, it's totally different from that. That's also why, yes. So they really, I mean, you talk a lot. Now you don't talk about how much you earn. It's not a normal thing to ask. They don't care about it, but they like to save on things, and they like to brag about like, oh, this costed €8 and I paid €5 for that. So there are a lot of conversations like that. But yeah, you will never see a Dutch person. I mean, no, I don't want to say you will never see, because there are exceptions to everything. But you don't see Dutch people wearing expensive jackets, super like you don't see them wearing brands. The like physical assets are not that important for them. But yeah, for us, for Slavic people, it's different.
Oh, you know what though? Yesterday I was watching this YouTube channel, and it was focusing on like a part of Moscow that is very much it's called Patriarchat or something like this. It's like the fanciest area in all of Moscow, and it was the most cringeworthy, disgusting piece of I can't even say here that I've ever seen, because it was just people flaunting their wealth, and a lot of it, you know what, like this very Eastern European like mentality with the girls come with the big lips and the like super like fancy, and then the handbags, and the guys come with their cars, and it's an absolute shit show. And I was watching this, and I was actually like, I was thinking, you know what? Sometimes I can be a little bit critical, being like, oh, like, let's say the Dutch, they're so frugal. And, there are some negatives about this for sure. When it comes to maybe beauty and romance, it's a little bit not as much as it could be, let's say, in our culture. But I also think there's some beauty to that you don't need to flaunt it to other people. It's all about like who you are as a person and what you can offer in terms of other things. But for us, this, especially now, what I see in Russia, it really disgusts me, because it's so much about appearance. People are so lost. They almost lost like all sorts of understanding of what life is about. Like, it's all just about proving to everyone else that you have it made. And that's why I think it's so great that the Dutch people, there's no, the bragging, the way it exists in our society doesn't exist.
Absolutely, yeah, they don't show up. But I also think like most of the Slavic countries were part of Soviet Union, and in the Soviet bloc back then, it was people just didn't have access to all those foreign goods, to foreign luxury, and it was like really a thing. I went to Paris and I brought this fur coat from Paris. It was like a real thing, and people wanted to get it. And the transition from communism to capitalism was not easy either. And if you made it, you really made it, and you like had to show it to everyone. So I think it has a lot to do with history. But I actually started loving it very much, the way it is in the Netherlands, that people value more what's inside and not what's outside. They really want to get to know you, and the first question when they meet you is not like, what do you do for a living, but more of a personal stuff. So yeah.
You raised such a great point. I moved to Canada when I was 12, and I just remember my dad, he traveled to the US for work, and he would bring us American things. This is back in the day when no one had anything. I remember my first Barbie, I remember all those things because we didn't have them. And you're right. It's the fact that the people were because no one had anything. It's like if you live in Cuba and all of a sudden you don't have any access to anything, and all of a sudden you get something and you want to show it to all the neighbors. It's that mentality. Whereas the Dutch, they never had this issue. They never had to prove that they're better to anyone else. I do find that it comes from lack in societies where there's a lot of of course, wealth gaps and everything. But you're right. I also have started to appreciate this in people, because it goes beyond the surface as well to how much you're making, who you are in terms of, are you the boss? Are you the secretary? Are you, and it's just easier to connect to people that way. You don't need to prove yourself as a woman, as a man. I want to talk about some of the negatives of that as well in a little bit. But yeah. And so the do normal, it's basically a part of Calvinism, that whole thing of don't show off.
Yeah. Yes, it is a part of Calvinism. Basically, modesty is being emphasized, and Dutch are also, they're quite pragmatic, and there are a lot of pragmatic influences in the culture as well. But this, they say in the north, doe normaal, anders doe je al gek genoeg. It's like behave in a normal way. If you are normal, then you are already crazy enough. So I think it has a lot to do with Calvinism mostly.
It is interesting that they say being yourself is crazy enough. I get it, but do you feel that sometimes it limits people as well, where they feel like, oh, maybe this is too much. I don't want to stand out too much.
Of course. My background story is kind of it's just dramatic. And I noticed when I moved to the Netherlands that when I was starting talking about it, people felt uncomfortable. They were like, "Oh, I'm not ready to hear this all. I'm just shocked, and I'm not ready to hear all this." So I also learned that when you just get to know a Dutch person, it's better to start with something light, like talking about the weather, about your weekend, about your holidays, but you shouldn't go immediately to, I don't know, existential crisis or your history. I mean, your background story. No, it's better to start lightly. And I think, it may limit you sometimes. I mean, I already get used to this. But also another part of this do normal story, I witnessed it in Italy. I visited Italy several months ago, and I met a friend of mine who is a musician, and it was around 1 a.m. and he proposed to make music on his roof. And I was like, what? But it's 1 a.m. Can you you want to jam right now on the street? He says, yeah. And I said, but there are no old people living here in the area who wouldn't like it probably because they're about to go to sleep. No, you see what happens. So we went on the roof and we started jamming. I started singing. He started playing. And then a lot of older people, they went out and they started watching us or joining us. They started dancing. They started bringing their own instruments. And I was shocked because in the Netherlands, it would never happen. Within 5 minutes, there would already be a police there, because the Dutch they call police quite fast. I mean, yeah. So that's of course
like the Germans.
It does limit people. Yeah, for sure.
What a funny story. I mean, I live in Canada, so I can totally relate to your way of thinking but it's 1 a.m. People are going to wake up. This is so rude. It's so inconsiderate because you're used to this. And I can also relate to being annoyed by, if you visit places like Spain or Mexico, people yelling outside your window, well in the morning, you're like, how dare you? I'm trying to sleep. Because now I live in this Canadian mentality of always being aware of other people in your space, right? Being considerate of other people is really, really important. And, but it is interesting that in Italy, even as an old person, you can get up at 1 a.m. and party. And I think I always say this, but with all the good and the bad, I think like in our really well-developed, colder parts of the world, we're missing a little bit of that spontaneity, right? Whereas like,
True.
it's also interesting speaking about old people in the Netherlands, because I have heard that like in the Netherlands, if you're older, you're kind of not so much a part of society anymore, it feels like. Whereas like in Italy, people like old and new, everybody kind of gets together at the party and hangs out. Do you think there's any truth to that, or do you think this is not so true?
To me, this is not that true. It's on the contrary. What I noticed is that a lot of older people, they still do a lot of sports. They do a lot of sport activities. They cycle a lot. They definitely go to events, to concerts together. So they are definitely a part of society, which is, for me, also one of the biggest differences compared to our Slavic mentality, where if you are 30, you are already an old woman, and a lot of old people, they just say. Even not old people, I mean, people who are 50 years old, they say, yeah, I'm too old for this, I'm too old for that. Dutch people, on the contrary, they just don't really, there is no ageism here, and you don't feel it as a woman, which I really love. And they go out a lot. That's what I notice, at least. Yeah.
What a great point. When you mentioned that we have ageism in Eastern Europe, I was thinking like, what age are you going to say? And I was thinking you're going to say 30. And I think it's so true because, and you know, there are all these jokes about like, oh, Eastern European women, they look so great up until a certain point and then they just give up. Well, if you live in a society where you're completely discarded and seen as invisible after 30, then you're just going to give up because you feel invisible, right? You stop trying. And I think that's what's happening in Eastern Europe to a lot of women. They become old because there's no value for them as women. And I do agree. I think and you're right. I think in the Netherlands, you're right. I've seen people that look really good in older years because they have very strong legs. They're fit. They cycle. They look healthy. Definitely, you know, in other parts of the world, like people do give up after a certain age. So I think that's something that is really nice about the society. But speaking of the do normal, I mean, do you feel like this is a struggle for you when it comes to Dutch society? Or what is something that you struggle with when it comes to mentality or culture or rules or anything else?
Well, to me, do normal, yes, is a thing I struggle with. I mean, that story I told you about Italy when I was jamming on the roof with musicians, and everyone just joined us. It was amazing, and I would like to experience that a lot more. And you don't see it a lot here, so that's I think is the biggest problem I struggle with, next to the Texas weather and the housing.
Yeah, where you have to live in a cardboard box.
Yes, quite true. Yeah.
Speaking of houses, does the do normal, does that translate to the way people organize their places? Because I know, for example, like in Scandinavia, it feels like everyone has the same kind of apartment.
Yes, it's pretty much the same here. I mean, it's very tiny, and there are high buildings, but they're very tiny, so there are not a lot of square meters. And if you go at least to student rooms, you see IKEA furniture, and I've seen a lot of houses which look the same. Absolutely, it's not. But I also seen beautiful houses, I must say. But most of the houses, from the inside, it's kind of the same, and it's just not big. There are not a lot of square meters because, I mean, come on, 17.5 million people for such small place. It's too much. So we don't have enough square meters for everyone, and that's why everyone should build up.
Where do you live in the Netherlands at the moment?
I live in Utrecht.
Okay. I have a question I'm genuinely curious about, because this is something that I can't exactly figure out. Okay, when it comes to Dutch fashion, I'm so confused about it because on the one hand, Dutch people, they seem to be very neutral into like kind of neutral colors, like very, casual. But on the other hand, I've seen some really crazy fashion choices from women, which is like leopard print and pink shimmery skirts with sneakers. And I'm trying to figure out what is the deal there.
Yeah, that's a very good question, because I'm trying to figure it out as well. And I still have not, to be honest. Just in terms of fashion, it's just not that important here. I mean, comfort is beyond fashion. The most important thing is that you feel comfortable. Also, when you go out, I mean, for us, for Slavic girls, when you go out, you should look at least as if you're attending an Oscars red carpet. But here not. So of course in Amsterdam you can see some fancy people, but just fashion is not that important. Important is simplicity, and I mean Dutch people think about it in that way, that okay, I better save some money, I better buy a house in the future, or I do more groceries, or go out to eat, or travel more rather than spend my money on clothing. And you really see it in terms of fashion. The Netherlands, in my opinion, is just not it. Yeah.
Yeah, it is interesting, because I always say like, oh, Dutch are very casual. Like when it comes to Dutch men, I think I have them figured out, and I'm sure you have as well. They have kind of a similar style, like a t-shirt or like a button-up shirt, some, Converse, and it's very much that. And also speaking of clothing, when I was dating my Dutch ex, we lived together, and Dutch also have a thing of wearing their outdoor clothes inside with the shoes and everything. And for us, this is not something you normally do. You usually change out of your clothing and you put on slippers, right? So is that something that you have also noticed?
I did notice that, and I posted a reel about it recently, and it got a lot of comments and people arguing, and there were so many people arguing about it. I was actually shocked, but what I noticed in the Netherlands, speaking from my own experience, I mean, not everyone is like that, but most of Dutch people I met, they come inside your house wearing shoes. And I couldn't understand why is that. And then someone left a comment under my post that, okay, why would you make your guests feel uncomfortable by asking them to take their shoes off? Like, it's your guest, so your guest can do whatever he or she wants. So why asking them? And then someone said, yeah, but what if you have children and they're just running there and touching everything? Yeah, then you basically clean your carpet, right?
I saw that comment. I actually saw I went into the comments. I saw people fighting, and I thought, how can you be fighting about this? Like, I feel like it's not like you're talking about personality. You're talking about something that's actually quite provable. And yeah, that was interesting. But, internet people love to basically argue over everything. So
yes, it's true. It's true.
You say Dutch food is like the best. No, it's not exact. If you say Dutch food is not creative, people will say, you haven't tried stamppot with, something like people will find an argument and everything.
And if you say it is creative, then you get a lot of people who say, no, it's disgusting, it's horrible, I don't like Dutch food. So
you went to Indonesia and you couldn't even pick up any spices for the food. Like you did all this, you conquered the world, but you're just your food is super boring.
But talking about the outfits and fashion, it's one of my most popular reels, and it's based on a true story. I went to my work and I was dressed I felt in the morning like I want to look nice, and I had time. Mostly I run late, but I had time to do makeup, to wear something nice. But it was not even a dress; it was just a basic costume, basically. But I put on my makeup, and then my colleagues see me and they say like, "Huh? do you have a birthday today? Is it your birthday today? I was like, no, it's not my birthday today. Why? And at least 7 people asked me that. And I was explaining to everyone, no, it's not my birthday. I just decided, well, I'm just looking like that, just casually, basically. But I just had more time to put on my makeup in the morning. But people were like, yeah, is it your birthday, or is there any party you are attending today? Is there anything special? So it's really, people usually don't make that much effort to look nice, I would say. But on the other side, it's really normal for the Dutch people to go to the gym. So they really care about their physical activities, about their body, about their health. But I guess it's more about health than looking beautiful. But I'm not sure. But most of the Dutch, they go to the gym, and it's like a very normal thing for older people to attend the gym.
I'm going to say something slightly controversial, but I think that, okay, in Eastern Europe, women dress up, but men usually are just whatever, and they don't even go to the gym a lot of times. You know where I'm going with this?
Yeah.
But in the Netherlands, I find the men really pay attention to how they look, the amount of gel that goes into that hair, the amount of, gym time, even just the way they dress. I really like Dutch man style. I find it's very attractive. However, the women, and I've heard other people write about this as well. I was like, but I feel like when you go to Eastern Europe, it's the women that put in the effort. And when you go to Western Europe, I think, especially when it comes to the Netherlands, or maybe even like Germany, Austria, but it's definitely the Netherlands. Just Dutch men, they look really, really, really good. And they really do try to look good. And I feel like, it's equivalent of Eastern European girls in a way, because our men definitely will never put in that much of an effort unless they're more sexual, or they're like gym goers, or but overall, men should look a little bit more attractive than a monkey. Maybe not as much anymore, but we still have that premise. Status is more important for Eastern European men than looks or anything else, or age. But for Dutch guys, I feel like it's still more the appearance is important.
It's true. I was also thinking about that, and I was thinking why. And I figured out that maybe it has to do something with our demographical problem, because basically, especially for Russia, there are a lot more women than men, and there is ageism as well. So it happens, unfortunately, quite a lot statistically, that men go away from their wife and they find someone younger. So it feels like a competition to find the right man. And here you don't have that competition. And while for us, for the people from the post-Soviet Union, since a lot of our men, unfortunately, they had to go through the war. And you
have to go through the war still.
And have to go through the war still. You need to win that attention, and man really doesn't need to do a lot to get that attention. I mean, he will get it anyways, because there are so many women out there, and all of them are beautiful. And here you don't have that. So women are also relaxed. They're like, no, I will find my man. I will find my man. He will come to me. So, yeah.
I 100% agree with you. And I also feel like being in a relationship with the Dutch man, appearance is not as important to men here. What's more important is like your partnership qualities. Are you a good partner? Are you self-sufficient? Are you independent? Do you take care of yourself, but not in a way that like you're going to get fake eyelashes and big lips. It's more that like they can respect you as a human being. As an example, I remember telling my ex, like, oh, like it's good for women to get more hours of sleep, because they look better and this. And he said, like, no, well, but then she's just lazy. Like she should wake up early. She should do work, and these kind of things. Like, I remember I got fake eyelashes. They didn't look good. Okay. So for the record, but he hated it. Like he thought it was so not do normal. He thought it was so over the top, so unnecessary. And he just didn't. Like the things that might make another man go crazy, like now I'm dating a Brazilian guy and everything, like a tight dress or, long hair or like that stuff makes him go crazy. But for a Dutch guy, my ex-boyfriend, and I want to hear your perspective on this, but he just, a lot of times he was like, oh, okay, but you don't need to do any of this. Like, it's not going to make me feel more attracted to you. You know what I mean? But like, if you're independent, if you're taking care of yourself, if you're working, if you're succeeding, that makes me more attracted to you.
Yeah, it's also something I noticed. I mean, I also experienced it many times that I put a makeup on, I put a beautiful dress on, and Dutch guy would just tell me, yes, but you're actually more beautiful without any makeup and without that dress. I like you in more oversized hoodies, you know, then you're more yourself. So I think it's that thing of being more yourself, I guess, and not trying to impress anyone. It's also really it's really a Dutch trait, I guess, and I like it. Like I started liking it very much. So I think, I think that it's more important for them what's inside and not on the surface.
Yeah. I think it's that ability to like have a conversation, because they love debating, they love talking, they love someone who can handle their part of the conversation. I think that this I definitely found, and I think that independence, I think it's a really important part for a woman, because for our women, it's still important that she makes the man feel like, oh, can you open this, or can you do this for me? Like, can you be a man in the relationship? And I feel like with Dutch guys, they don't fully understand that. Like, what do you mean be a man in a relationship? We're both partners that are contributing equal amounts to the relationship. At least that's been in my experience, but I want to hear your experience with dating Dutch guys. You told me before that it was positive. So have you noticed any of this? And also, this gender role dynamic, how does that play out in the Netherlands?
When it comes to dating Dutch guys, it's really difficult for me to generalize, because all Dutch guys I had a relationship with, they're so totally different from each other that it's very difficult to generalize. I met Dutch guys who are extremely romantic, who write poetry, music, but like more artistic people. But I also met Dutch guys who are like, I don't like surprises, and please don't surprise me unless you tell me beforehand that you're going to surprise me at 6 o'clock right there. But please don't surprise me without telling me about it. I'm not ready for that. So my experience has been really versatile when it comes to dating Dutch. What I noticed the most, and what it's I don't know if I can tell about the difference from Slavic and from the Dutch. What struck me the most was actually that gender equality when it comes to dating the Dutch, because Dutch guys are great parents. I think that Dutch men are really great fathers. And I mean, the Netherlands is quite progressive when it comes to gender equality. And it was, I think, one of the biggest shocks for me in the Netherlands, because when we moved to the Netherlands, I moved with a little brother, and he was 5 back then. And my family sent him to school, and on his first day, we went to pick him up. And when we arrived to his school, we noticed that 85% of people waiting outside, of the parents waiting outside, were men. And my mom looked at me and she asked me, Alisa, but in 11 years of your school in Kyrgyzstan, how many fathers did you see? And I realized that I have never seen any father of any of my friends, because it's just not that common. It's something women do. Women take care of children. Women are busy with their children's upbringing, but men not. And here it's different. I see a lot of men on the street when they're with their children, a lot of fathers playing with their children, and it's so cute. And every time I look at it, I'm like, oh, it's so amazing. And it's also what I noticed in a relationship with the Dutch, that they're usually tidy, they clean, they cook for you. A lot of Dutch guys, they say, I'm a good cook, I'm going to surprise you with this dish or that dish. And I even felt uncomfortable by that. I was like, isn't it a woman who's supposed to do all of that? But that's basically what I love about about Dutch guys.
Yeah, I think it's not surprising because they're raised as kids to be self-sufficient, and they also move out earlier than guys from other countries. Like I can imagine guys in Central Asia or guys in Eastern Europe. They live with their parents a lot. And I notice even, I have a brother. My brother is in his 40s. And my mom is still like, oh, but he's a man. He doesn't know how to do this. If we go to his house and it's messy, oh, let's help him clean up. Let's have, serve the man at the table, still this mentality. And I've lived in Canada since I'm 12 years old. And so in my mind, it's like, oh, man needs to be taken care of. And I do like that. I do like cooking and I do like doing these kind of things. But I think it's that they live alone for such a long time that they're kind of encouraged to be independent as a child, and that translates into their adult life, that like they don't need their mommy to come and take care of them, which is like, I know like there's a term like mamitis in Mexico, in Italy, mamone. I think it's like mama's boys because they live with their mom, and the mom is like, oh baby, you're a man, you can't do this, you can't do that, and then they find a woman, and then of course the pattern repeats all over again, right? I think that's a really wonderful quality. There's nothing bad that we can say about that.
No. So yeah, to me, it was only a positive experience basically. But when I hear my girlfriends who go on dates with Dutch guys, especially Slavic girlfriends, they're like, I don't feel like going to the date, getting Tikkie, having a bad conversation, and then going home. Really, I don't feel like that, but I'm sure they just have not met right guy yet, the right guy. He will be there because Dutch men, I think Dutch men, are handsome and overly good looking. I agree. I agree with you on that point, and I think that they're self-sufficient, as we said, and it's really important.
Let's talk about the Slavic girls that go on dates with Dutch guys and the Tikkie thing. I mean, from what I know, Tikkie is something that you typically use when you're out with friends. And I see that it makes sense. And here's why. I was just in Spain visiting my friend. And I really started to think about like Dutch and Scandinavian culture. And I thought, you know what? Maybe there's some positives about it, because in Spain, it's like, oh, I'll pay for you. Don't worry. You can pay next time. And next time you get a bigger bill. And you're like, oh, but she paid. So now I have to pay a bigger bill, or you'll pay. They're like, oh, don't worry about it. Like, don't worry. Or we went out with a friend of mine and her friends apparently paid for her at some point. So she just left. She didn't pay the bill. And because I was supposed to pay for my friend, I ended up paying for this third person I don't even know. And so, and being from Canada, I'm kind of in the middle on this, but it's still the sense here is that if you get a bill and this is your part of the bill, then you pay whatever you order. Because if you ordered a little bit of food and people are like, oh, whatever, let's just split it 3 ways. Well, you ordered a steak and I ordered a salad, and somehow I'm ending, now I'm paying a bigger portion of the bill because you're just like, oh, it doesn't matter, but maybe it matters. You know what I mean? So I've learned to appreciate the Dutch being like, this is my thing. I'll take care of that. You take care of your own thing. How do you feel about that? And do you feel like it can be taken to extremes as well?
Yes, I feel the same. Sometimes it can help, especially if you are out with a huge group and you order a lot, and of course you don't want to make one person to pay for that, and it's just Tikkie makes it really easy. But sometimes it can be taken to extremes, and there are a lot of memes about that in the Netherlands. And everyone loves to discuss the most ridiculous Tikkie they ever got. And for me, it was a Tikkie for 57 cents. I got it from a Dutch friend of mine. And it was for a bus ticket. We were traveling together, and he sent me a Tikkie for 57 cents. And I was like, here is your Tikkie. It was a bit ridiculous. So sometimes you can get those ridiculously small Tikkies for the small amounts of money. But when it comes to dates, I have not really experienced a lot of Tikkies. I mean, I met also a lot of generous Dutch guys. I mean, it really depends on where the guy is from, what is his cultural background, what is his what does his family look like. So I met some generous guys, but in a relationship, I have not experienced any problems with tickets. I mean, it's always welcome when you pay 50-50, or if you offer to pay. They see that as something like nice. Okay, if you want to do this, you can. While for Slavic guys, they can be offended by that. I experienced that as well. Like, you think I'm not manly enough, or you think I can't afford that. So they can be offended by that. But yeah, Tikkie, I think Tikkie is overall a good thing, unless it's 57 cents, of course. Yeah.
That's a crazy story. I've heard of, I told a story of like a friend of mine, she's Dutch, and she went over to another friend's house. This reel went viral, by the way. People couldn't believe it. But she basically had some wine and some chips with a friend of hers. And then the friend sent her Tikkie for half the wine and half the chips that she had at her house. This is where it goes crazy. And I've searched Reddit, and there are some crazy stories of like an apple, a cigarette, like these kind of things where people are really taken to that extreme level. People can argue that and say, well, there's cheap people in every culture, but I think also because the culture encourages that, you kind of feel like you can get away with it. Like, oh, well, we're just Dutch, and that's the same thing with rudeness. There's direct Dutch people, and then there's just rude Dutch people, and then there's less direct Dutch people. But when it comes to, so you mentioned that like on the first date, it can really depend. And I agree. I've gone out with Dutch guys, and I've had really gentlemen guys that were like, oh, let me grab this. Let's go get ice cream. Let me get you ice cream. Like, I can agree that it's not like all Dutch guys go 50-50. I think that's a bit of a stereotype. But again, it's all in a spectrum, right? Because even that the most generous Dutch guy is not going to be the most generous Eastern European guy, because there's a whole kind of other level of like generous Eastern European guys will pay for your trip. If you're going to, I don't know, Bermuda, they'll be like, I'm paying for that, And Eastern European girls expect that as well. So maybe that's why your friends are like, even if he pays for the meal, like it's still not going to be to the extent that it would be in like Ukraine or Russia, where the guy is like, oh, get anything,
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. You shouldn't, you should reduce your demands and expectations, I think, when it comes to dating Dutch guys, because maybe you won't see the great gestures, 100 roses or anything like that. And maybe he won't pick you up from home and won't bring you back home because, well, it's relatively safe, to be honest. And most of Dutch guys also, they don't have cars. I mean, we bike here, and it's not a problem to bike to your date, I think. But maybe you get something more in return, basically. Maybe you get faith, and the guy would be faithful, because I think, but it's my perception that the Dutch guys are quite faithful. That's what I see as well. Maybe you will get more of the thing that he will really get to know you from the inside, and he will be interested in you and who you are as a person. And sometimes it's more than all those physical assets and paying for dates.
But let me ask you, as someone Eastern European, how important is paying and these kind of gestures? How important is that for you in a relationship?
As I get older, as I'm getting older, I noticed that it becomes more important for me, actually, than it used to be. Because when I was a student, I really didn't care about those things at all. And now I care about that a bit more, because, of course, obviously, I want to have a family and I want to build a future. And I kind of, even though I like if a person sees me for who I am from the inside, I still want to look fancy, and I love beautiful clothes, I love beautiful stuff, and of course I would love my partner to give me presents and stuff like that. I would appreciate it. So it is important for me, but in terms of paying for dates, I never mind if he splits and I pay half of it, or even, for instance, if I invite a guy for a date, then I would pay for it. Like if I invite, I will also pay. It's not that important to me that he pays each time, unless he earns a lot more money than I do. Then maybe, yeah, of course. But I would also feel a bit uncomfortable. And I've kind of always had that also back in Kyrgyzstan, that I can get that feeling quite fast that I should do something in return. Especially if I just if I'm just getting to know the guy and he does something great for me, I feel a bit guilty, like as if, oh my God, I have to thank him, but I'm about to dump him. So what should I do?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I just remember a conversation. I had this friend from school in Russia and we haven't spoken for many years. And then we touched base and she said, well, I'm dating this guy, but he's taking me to the Maldives and then I'm going to dump him. And I just thought, wow. And this is the worst of our Eastern European mentality, unfortunately, is this taking advantage of things. And I think, when it comes to even gender roles, I mean, gender roles in general are about people doing their part in the relationship. It's not just the woman taking and, the man, he should do, because this is the mentality now. Unfortunately, I find that like men should pay for me. Okay, but then what are you doing in return? Are you doing something in return? Are you maybe preparing some meat? Like, are you giving him surprise? Like, so I think it's an equal game in that. But I do think that as a woman, you still want the men to invest in a way, because like if he's doing nothing, then you just feel like I'm not priority. Like you kind of feel like he's not doing anything for you. And it somehow you lose this feeling of feeling special in a relationship. And then you don't want to try to do something for him. Because personally, I really love surprising my partners. But if I don't feel that in return, and I kind of wither away and I just don't feel like doing that anymore,
Yeah, the same for me, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, but of course, you are right. It should come from both ways. Like if he surprises you, you should also, I think, do something in return. And for men, there is a pressure out there as well that they should succeed. They should do this, that, and that. And I mean, it's also not easy for them out there. And I think it's nice when you show that appreciation for who the person is from the inside as well. If he's a nice person, but he can't afford expensive gifts, maybe that's okay. So, yeah.
Alisa, I wanted to ask you a couple more questions before we wrap up. And one of them is about making friends in the Netherlands. You had mentioned that when you just moved to the Netherlands, it was really hard for you to connect with people. What has helped you kind of get over that barrier of connecting with Dutch people?
When I moved to the Netherlands, I mostly made friends with internationals. I noticed that all the conversations with the Dutch people I met in the beginning were kind of superficial and they stayed there. So we never went really deeper, and people looked as if they were interested in me, but they were not really. And in the beginning, I was not very lucky with making friends in the Netherlands. I had a very bad experience, actually, because I auditioned for the acting school and I was accepted there, and I was the only foreigner in my group. And acting school in any country, it would be a very competitive environment. I heard a lot of crazy stories about the acting schools in other countries as well, that people get bullied. But for me, it was also like extreme. And I remember back in Kyrgyzstan, I always had a lot of friends and I never had any problem with making friends. And suddenly in the Netherlands, I got a problem with friends. Like I didn't have anyone to go out with. And for the acting school, I moved from that city where I used to live to another city, to a new city. And back in Groningen, in the city where I used to live in my first year, I already had some international friends I made during the Dutch course, but in the new city, I didn't have any. And I was bullied quite bad at school. Nobody wanted really to be, I mean, there were two girls who were like okay with me, but it was really taken to extreme to some point that everyone was, after the classes, everyone just took their bikes and they were going somewhere. And I asked the girl, hey, where is everyone going? And she told me, yeah, to my birthday. So like I was the only one not invited and everyone was mimicking my accent and I was just feeling very, very bad and I was missing my country a lot. But then when I stopped, I dropped out of the acting school and I decided to go to the university and move back to the city where I used to live. There I made immediately like a lot of friends. And I think it has to do with me becoming more open. So I'm an introvert, and I used to. I like when people make attempt basically to get to know me, and when they invite me. But with the Dutch people, I noticed that you should also put some efforts. You should also propose to, hey, let's go out, let's do that. And what also helped me is learning Dutch, basically, because when I was at the acting school, I was bullied because of my language, and it made me even more shy to speak it, because my classmates were mimicking me sometimes, like they were repeating the things I was saying wrong, and I didn't dare to speak it. And at some point, I let it go, and I started speaking it, and at that point, I also started making more friends. So learning Dutch is definitely beneficial, even though all Dutch people, they speak perfect English usually. But still, when you want to make deeper connections, it really helps to learn Dutch.
Can you say something in Dutch so people can see that you speak it?
Nou, ik weet niet wat ik zou moeten zeggen.
You have a perfect accent. It's amazing, really.
Dankjewel.
It's cool. And you actually, like, honestly speaking, I mean, if I didn't know you're Eastern European, I would totally think you're just Dutch. You know, you have kind of like this cool casual style that, like, I feel like people wouldn't even know where you're from, right? You could pass for anything.
Yeah, I mean, I also look Dutch.
Yeah.
And I'm tall as hell also.
How tall are you?
I'm 180.
Oh, wow. This is the perfect country for you then.
Yeah,
also, the only country where you can find a boyfriend that's taller than you, probably.
It's true. In Kyrgyzstan, it was dramatic. I used to come home telling to my mom that I want to get an operation to become smaller and to get my eyes smaller as well, because I was just never considered beautiful in my back in Kyrgyzstan. Because there are different beauty standards.
I think that's a great point, because for a lot of people, you're not just like, there's nothing wrong with you. You're just in a wrong country, kind of a thing, you know, because just move countries and you're going to fit right in. Like in your case, you're tall, go to a country where people are tall enough that you don't feel like you stand out, you know, and same with beauty, you know, like, because I see that beauty. So the concept of beauty is so different around the world in terms of like, if you're curvy, then maybe don't go to Asia because no one's going to appreciate that, you know, go to Brazil, or, you know what I mean? But I mean, for me, you're beautiful, right? But it's crazy to think that would be different in Kyrgyzstan because of some different beauty standards, or whatever the case may be.
Of course. And when I just came to the Netherlands, the first person I met, it was an extremely tall woman. She's still the tallest person I've ever met. I think she was something like, above 2 meters for sure.
And that's so hard.
When I saw her, I was like, I'm at the right place.
Poor woman. I think it's so hard, even as a man who's that tall. I think life can be so complicated. No, not just the airplane seats, but actually just talking to people and always hearing the same thing, like, whoa, you're so tall, or what does it look like from up there? What's the weather up there? And I can imagine being a woman that's that tall and having to date, like, your pool of eligible men, if you're looking to date someone around your height, is going to be tiny. So poor girl. But last question for you, since you mentioned this, I really want to touch upon this quickly, but you mentioned that with Dutch people, it can feel a little bit superficial when you start the conversation. And that's a really interesting point, because there's a stereotype that Dutch people are direct. I also think Eastern Europeans are direct, but I do think that the way that they're direct the way that they come off and the way they perceive directness is quite different, because when you start a conversation with someone Eastern European, I think we typically to kind of get down to the core, and we don't like superficial conversations. And I do think that Dutch people, they can be direct and efficient. However, there is a sense that like they like to keep things very small talk at the very beginning of conversation, right? Or even when you're getting to know them, even like in the later stages of becoming friends and getting closer. So how would you compare this directness? Have you struggled with Dutch people, I guess, still a small talk culture in a way, in that kind of everything is lekker, everything is leuk, this kind of thing?
Yes. So, I think you are right there that for us, for Slavic people, I mean, it's very important to go to the core. And it's also what I noticed and what I mentioned earlier, that when I start, for instance, talking about my background story, it can be like it can easily become too much for the Dutch people. And what I noticed, for instance, at the parties, that's at some point when people get drunk, they start to play board games. While for us, we would already be sitting drunk in the kitchen, singing or talking about our existential crisis and the world's politics. And here it's really not that common. You keep it very simple. And I think that also has to do with that do normal mentality. It's like very simple. And for me also at my work, when I hear people speaking, it sounds more or less the same usually. Like, how was your weekend? Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Like, how was your weekend? Yeah. I went with my children to eat at the Chinese restaurant. That was really nice. And yours? Yeah, we went shopping and and then they can talk about it for hours, or about the weather. They really like to talk about the weather, and not just to mention like, oh, it's raining and that's it. But no, like, it's raining, and around that time last year it was not raining that much. I heard that it's raining a lot this year, and blah blah blah, and it just goes on and on. So it's really, what I notice is stays superficial. But again, when you already become friends with a person, and when you get to know a person on a deeper level, of course, then you can go deeper. But just it takes some time, and I feel as if for us, for Slavic people, it takes less time before we arrive there. But with Dutch people, you should really be careful in the beginning. But in the end, yeah, you can, when you're friends, you can just be yourself and talk about your depression and bad dates and tikkies.
Yeah. Eastern Europeans go straight for the stuff that is not always positive. And I think it is interesting that Dutch are stereotyped as being direct. And I think they are direct, but I just think their directness has more to do with efficiency, and our directness has more to do with, we don't like bullshit. We have a bullshit radar. We feel when someone is saying things just to say things. We don't like things that are too positive, or people don't mean it. And I think this is where the difference lies, because you're right, like, being around Dutch people, there's still a lot of like, as you said, like, it's kind of like conversations that are safe. It's safe topics. It's like, this is look. Oh, this is lekker. Oh, this is nice. Oh, this is great. Oh, wonderful. Oh, so whenever they say, oh, we don't like small talk, I think, well, what is that? I mean, because that's, for me, that's not real talk. That's just superficial conversation that you only engage in to keep yourself safe and to not maybe go into the deep end. Whereas for us, we just have a radar for these kind of things. And I've realized that about myself as well, just like living in Canada, traveling. I really love it when people are honest, they're deep. We can have a deep conversation. We can get there right away. Even if I just know you for 5 minutes, if we can go there, like, I want to see more of you, because I can't have this conversation where it just feels like we're both playing a role, we're both trying to be nice. Like, it feels wrong to me on some very deep, profound level. And maybe you feel the same, but maybe this is an Eastern European thing, you know?
Yeah, I feel totally the same. Sometimes I just don't know what to say, and I run from this kind of conversations at the lunch during the lunch with some people I just met, or some colleagues I don't know that well. I just try to run away, because I know that it will be about basically nothing. But again, my best friend is Dutch, for instance, and with her I can discuss anything. But she's also a very artistic person, so she writes poetry. She's herself like very open-minded, but yeah, she's still Dutch, and we can still talk about anything. So maybe it also really depends on the person, but yeah, in general, it's what I noticed.
Yeah, and definitely. I think like even when I was in Sweden, I remember meeting these group of guys that were doing acro yoga, and they were like, we got along in a very different way because they just didn't fit into that like perfect stereotype of what, a Swedish person was. And they were more typically creative people, artistic people. They think differently. They're more open-minded. But do you think it's true that also like Dutch people can be direct in that way, where if you want advice, they will tell it like it is?
Yes, for sure. They can be direct in both ways, I think, but quite often, at least to foreigners I know, and to me as well in the beginning, it sounds rude when they're being direct. So a lot of foreigners here, I know, a lot of my foreign friends, they say like, "Oh yeah, but Dutch are just rude. They're not direct. They're rude." And I experienced that myself as well. It was very funny. I met a guy, and it was basically one of our first meetings, and we were sitting in a restaurant, and then he told me, "Oh, okay, so yeah, your grandparents are Ukrainian. It's quite funny because you're so different from all other Slavic girls." And I was like, I took it as a compliment, because I thought, not because I think there is something wrong with Slavic girls, but because I think he means that my Dutch is very good, and I'm very well integrated, and that you almost don't see where I'm from. And I said, "Oh, okay, thank you. Why is that?" And he told me, "Yeah, Slavic girls usually take care of themselves. They usually really, care about how they look like, and they, like trying to look perfect. And yeah, you're not like that." And then I was like, okay, I will. I was like, okay, I will. I want to know more about that. I was like, yeah, in which sense? You mean that I am not dressed well, or what do you mean? He said, yeah. Well, when it comes to your makeup, you don't wear, like, your makeup is not. I can't say it's perfect. I mean, it's okay, but it's not perfect. And to your teeth, if I were you, I would wear braces. And like, I was like, oh my God. So yeah, you have some Dutch people who are like that. Yeah, and I'm not even sure whether it's rude or direct. To me, by that time, it was definitely more rude than direct. Yeah.
But I have a question for you. Did he text you afterwards trying to see you again, or was he not interested?
Yeah, of course. We are friends now.
Okay, so he still wanted to date you.
I mean, I guess by that time, yes, definitely. But I mean, we're still talking. So
I mean, you could definitely come to him for appearance advice, I suppose. I had a Dutch guy once say to me, "Oh, you're Russian? I mean, you're cool for a Russian person," which is, I guess, still, I thought it was quite. I wouldn't say it's insulting, because I know Dutch people don't like Russian people, and now especially more. But I know that. But so I suppose it was a compliment. But I've also had, I once was texting with a guy, we're like arranging a date, and he was Dutch. And I was like, "Oh, come, we having this party." And I sent him photos and videos of the party, because he was like, "Send me some photos." And then he's like, "You know what? I'm not coming." And I said, "Why not?" "Well, listen, if you want a guy to come to see you, like, what do you think you're going to achieve by sending me photos of the party? Like, I wanted to see photos of you, and you didn't do that, so I'm not coming to the party." I was like, all right, well, but it was the way he even wrote it. It was so like, just
in your face. Yeah.
Exactly.
Did he come still to the party, or?
No, he did not. No. But okay. I was okay with that, because I was like, okay, well, this is our first interaction. Like, I feel like it's just going to go downhill from there. I mean, it's already at the bottom of the hill. So anyways, I have many, many more interactions like that, where I feel like in a way, there's a bit of like a lack of empathy in the interaction, where they're not putting themselves in your shoes and thinking, how is that going to be received? Like, you don't have to be like overly nice, but maybe preface it with something positive, or just kind of soften the blow a little bit, so that the reception of that is not going to hurt as much, because there's obviously like more rude people. There's more nice people in the Netherlands, but yeah, it's definitely a thing that people talk about. And that's crazy. What a crazy first date that someone said that. Were you offended, or were you just kind of like, whatever, I don't care?
Yeah, I actually took braces afterwards. So I guess But I mean,
No.
he made me, no, not that I became, yeah. I mean, I started looking more at myself and I started like analyzing more. So I guess I was younger than now. So I was kind of, I
Well,
was not that confident. So I started analyzing myself more. And in the end, I mean, we are still talking. He told me, I'm very happy you took my advice. Now you look better.
so he
But I
helped
can
you.
laugh about it. Really, I can laugh about it. So
That's
ridiculous, but funny at the same time.
that's funny.
Yeah.
Alisa, I can keep talking to you literally forever. I think I can keep going for another hour. I have so many questions, but logistically, I cannot go over this time. So I wanted
Same for
to,
me. Yeah.
yeah, let's wrap it up on this point. I think people are going to really, really enjoy listening to this podcast. I just feel like we did almost an hour and a half, literally filled with information for anybody that's curious about the Netherlands, or even for anyone that's curious about the experience of moving to another country. I think it's so interesting for me. I always love and I always prefer talking to foreigners about another culture, because it's kind of, if you live in that culture your whole life, you're really not going to have as strong of a perspective on your own culture. And you have that, you can compare it to your own country and you get more of a perspective on what Dutch culture is really like. But at the same time, you've assimilated enough where I feel like you're almost Dutch in a way, you know? So I think you
Sure.
have the best of both worlds. That's why it was so interesting to listen to you. And it wasn't just a negative experience and it wasn't just a positive experience. It was a really honest portrayal of what your experience was like. So thank you so much.
Yeah. Lekker direct. Lekker direct.
Exactly. Alisa,
Thank you very much.
thank you. And where can people find you?
On Instagram, my name is Alisa Law. Yes, is it Alisa Law? Yes, it is Alisa Law.
Yep.
And you can find me on Instagram and on TikTok.
Perfect. So I'm going to link to all your socials at the bottom of this, wherever the people are watching, listening.
Thank you.
And they can go check you out. You have some really funny reels on that, on your social medias. So I think people will really enjoy it. And you're a cool person in general. You don't always get social media creators that are like, you know, they've actually taken the time to think about culture. Like, I think it's cool to talk to you because you're not just on the surface creating social media, but you've actually really taken the time to analyze Dutch culture. And that's why I really enjoyed this conversation again.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Thanks, Alisa. Have a great rest of your day and enjoy rainy Netherlands.
Thank you. I will take my umbrella and will enjoy. Thank you. Thank you.